2 or 3 were founders or co-founders. I think there were a couple of guys that were not, but yeah, it was a good conversation. It was a couple of weeks ago. All right, we're live on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to ScaleUp Heroes. Our goal is to bring you the best minds with the best real-life experiences when it comes to scaling up businesses. These are the heroes that took on the difficult odds, and they're living to tell the tale. I'm your host, Randy Cantrell, and to all of our viewers, we want to invite you to visit our website, ScaleUpAcademy.io. Today, we're going to discuss scaling up culture. So we welcome our viewers, we welcome our guests to the show, and let me introduce today's moderator, Linda. Linda, I'll back out and let you have the floor. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the intro and a warm welcome to this week's episode of ScaleUp Heroes. I'm Linda. I'm going to be moderating the discussion we have in front of us today. A few words about me. I'm a HR consultant based in Berlin, originally from Sweden. And my main touch points when it comes to scaling businesses is that I was heading HR for a fast-growing tech company. Under my HR leadership, it grew from 20 to about 100 full-time employees and also grew into a global company. So that's essentially my background before moving on and becoming an independent consultant. And welcome to this discussion. We have a bit of a complex topic ahead of us today. We are going to talk about the topic of scaling company culture. Many successful companies do put large emphasis on and efforts into creating a great cultures. And we have the likes of Netflix, Virgin, Zappos, Twitter, etc. There are names that are over and over again being mentioned when you have a discussion around successful examples of great company culture. And we do know that good company culture can be paramount to business success. Yet it is difficult to get this topic right, given the wide array of aspects that impacts culture and given the complex nature of the topic of culture. So during the next 40 minutes, we are going to discuss the pitfalls, the success factors when creating and scaling company culture. And with me today to crack this difficult yet important topic is Annelies de Boer, Chief HR Officer at Speakap, which is a platform that enables companies to reach and engage with their customer-facing employees, and Kevin Duffy, founder of Winnow, which is a company helping organizations in the hospitality industry to reduce food waste. Very interesting products, both of them, and big welcome to the two of you. Before we kick it off, I will also start handing over to the two of you to give a bit of a deeper introduction to yourself, starting with Annelies. So welcome to go ahead and say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you for your introduction. As said before, I'm responsible within Speakap for HR. And we're creating this platform for enforcing all non-desk employees to become better in their internal communications. So I think being good in internal communication is part of having this company culture. So that's what we try to enforce. Before working here, I've only started in January. I worked in the bigger corporates like Ronald Burger and Heineken, but I decided that I had enough knowledge to try to build something. So that's what I'm doing here.
Cool. Thanks for that. And I also want to invite you, Kevin, to say a few more words about yourself and your background.
Sure. Thanks again for the introduction, Linda, and pleasure to be here today. So I'm Kevin Duffy, one of the founders of Winnow. Winnow helps commercial kitchens around the world to better understand why food waste happens, where it happens, and use the data we gather to change the way they prepare and serve food in a way that effectively means less waste. So better for the planet and better for their business at the same time. We as a company have just celebrated our 5th anniversary, and we're going through a period of ongoing period of rapid growth. So company culture has been a big deal for us to think a lot about as we've gone from a very small company where the founders could very much control the culture to a much bigger company where we've had to learn how to hand over the reins for that to the wider organization to take that forward.
Interesting. That's actually a topic that I want to get back to at a later stage, basically what you're saying, when and how to start thinking about company culture. But yeah, let's kick it off straight away. But I want to start with asking a bit of an obvious question, but what would you say are benefits of establishing a good company culture? Annelies, what would you say?
Well, I think it's the glue of your organization, because if you have a strong company culture, which everybody feels at ease in, feels welcome in, open and connected to the company culture, and in that way also connected to each other, I think it's the base of working together and achieving the goals.
Yeah. Kevin, do you want to add something to that?
I guess one way I think of culture is how you know a member of your team is going to react in an environment when you're not there, and still react in a way that you would be proud of and follows the way that you want your business to grow. So making sure you've got the right culture in a very strange way from a founder perspective is continuing to have control of an organization when you can't have direct control.
Yeah, exactly. And what would you say, what would you say would be implications if you don't manage to master this, if you don't manage to create a healthy and a good company culture?
I think, first and foremost, your business is made up of your people. And if they don't feel like that culture matches them, reflects them, if they don't feel like they're a part of that, they're unlikely to give you their best, and then therefore that's going to be a constant drag on your business if you've got misalignment of values and culture. It's really hard to get everyone rowing in the same direction, so to speak. It's tremendously powerful in the flip side case, where everyone is aligned behind a common purpose and has a company culture that they have actively signed up to and feel like they own a piece of the definition of. It's an amazing experience, and one that's very, very different, one that I'm experiencing for the first time at Winnow.
Cool. And would you say that this, if the lack of culture, would you think that even could reach, let's say, end customers and people that are not within the organization? Do you think it could become visible to externals as well, essentially?
Absolutely. I think you always have a company culture, right? It may not be the one you want, but there will be, by definition, a culture. I think what's different for me in my previous experience in corporate environments versus Winnow is that culture is largely defined by the purpose and the mission of the organization. If you asked me what the mission or values of prior organizations I worked for might be, I imagine the real answer was on paper somewhere and with some corporate speak, but very few people would have known what those were, and they probably weren't very differentiated from the next competitor down the street. No. For us, it's very easy to align to those values, and as long as we continue to respect those and hire for those values, it's sort of reinforcing itself. It's like the culture takes its own momentum, and now it would be, I think, somewhat difficult to diverge from our culture or to change our culture off in a way that's off course and misaligned with our mission.
Annelies, what do you say to this, both in terms of implications of not mastering setting the right company culture?
I'm totally agreeing, because, well, firstly, if you don't have a clear company culture, like in terms of customers, I think they will experience inconsistency because everybody's like acting in a different way. In terms of what is this company culture, and is it based on either purpose or mission or values? We are in the phase of creating a company culture, because we are now in the stage of growing super fast. So at the beginning of this year, we were with 15 people, and now we're with 50. So how do we stick together, and what are the company values? And so what is our company culture? So we're really in the phase of defining it. And you see that although a lot of different people are working here, and also some of them are working here for 5 years and some of them are working here only for a month, they feel that it's super necessary to, connect with each other and define what our values are and what we want to act upon, and also what we want to share with, like, not only internally but also externally with our customers.
Could you share a little bit more about that process? How do you go about, because it is a big topic, it is a very, very complex topic to tackle, what you're saying, establishing and basically deciding the company culture that you want to create and essentially then also scale. Could you share a little bit more about of course.
Well, at the beginning of this year, we did value research, which had 3 components. So the first one was, so there was a huge list of all kind of values. So the first part of the research was, we asked everybody to list their 10 values, their personal values. The second assignment was, what do you think are the 10 current company values? And the third assignment was, what would be the desired company culture values? So in the end, we had 3 lists of every individual, which we combined, and we came up with, the outcome of these 3 lists. So the top 10 personal values, top 10 current values, and the top desired values. And especially linking these 3. So what is there a link between the personal values, company values, but also the desired values, but also what's the jump? So for example, smart or clever was a huge jump for us because people thought that we could work way smarter. So we had the outcome of the research, and then that was done by the whole company and everybody was involved, and we had this discussion with everybody. And then I asked who would like to join. So we phrased it like the company culture crew. So 5 people joined the company culture crew, from every discipline, 1 individual. And with them,
was voluntary. Sorry to interrupt. That was voluntary to join.
Because I think some people feel that they want to do something with these topics, and others are they are okay with whatever happens. So really the ones who would like to participate, but from every discipline, 1 individual, so that you have from every part of the company some insights and knowledge. So we had 2 meetings. So the first one was this list. So in total 30 values. So what would we think should be the top 3 values? So that's what we did in the first session, literally by discussing, so what does it mean? Because the value is also a vague, it can mean different things for different individuals. They can interpret it in different ways. So that's what we did. So make very clear, what does these values mean? What is it in your personal life and what is it in your work life? Because that can also be something different. So we came up with the top 3 and we discussed it with the founders. If they agreed upon these 3 values and if they felt, these are the values we want to build the company on. We rephrased 1 value, but they were also agreeing upon these 3 values. And now we're in the phase of how are we branding this internally? Because it's one thing to have these top 3, but how do you make sure that everybody's living the values in a way? So that's the phase we're now in. So everybody from the company culture crew has a specific assignment on how to brand the values internally. And that can be literally merchandise, but also having some kind of specific activities which involve personal interests. But they are all linked to these 3 values, which we would really like to enforce the company culture on. So that's how we're building it now. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, especially what you're mentioning about, the second step. Now, when it's created, then how do we go about actually integrating it? Which is something that I will get back to later. But I also want to add to what you were saying about clarifying what it actually means, because I think that's something that some organizations sometimes are missing. You have these values, but what does it actually mean, and what does it actually mean in terms of actions? So I'm in the process now, for example, of helping a small but growing tech company to establish their core company values. And then we designed an exercise that basically everyone starts by listing behaviors and action that has made an impact on them, or that have basically drawn their attention, both in a positive way, but also in a negative way, to really start with actions, and then from that draw what does that say about what is important to you and which values you do have. So I really think it's important what you're saying, to really clarify what does a value mean in terms of actionable and understandable behavior, rather than a vague sort of, or a broad word which can be interpreted differently from person to person, or from employee to employee. So that's very interesting. Kevin, do you mind also sharing a little bit more about your process on working with and developing company culture?
Sure. I think similar to Annelies, we went through a process probably very similar. Started about 2 years ago. We realized we were maybe a company of around 15. And by the time we were going to be a company of 50, we realized that the culture of the organization, we needed to hand over the reins of that to other people and let them take it forward. I think while we were small, maybe a company of 15 and in one office, I think a lot of the culture can really be can issue from the founders. They're there every day. Everyone interacts with them a lot, and really early days, the culture is a bit the philosophy and mindset of the founders in many cases I've seen. But once you begin to get beyond that and you start opening offices in other locations around the world, if you haven't set the right foundations in place, I think that's the point where you can lose control of it, and the culture can go off in different directions, and you can have a confused, incoherent culture effectively that grows around certain strong personalities in the organization. So I think recognizing that in advance was a great moment for us. Some of our early joining employees probably were a strong hand in pushing myself and my co-founder Mark to focus a lot of our energy on this when we were really focused on the business. And so we then started putting a lot more energy into how are we going to get this transition phase right. And the practical exercise we went through was a process of starting sort of from the top down with a set that is another variant of MVP, your mission, your vision, and your purpose, and defining those before moving on to try to focus on values. And then we did something probably very similar to what Annelies did, where we actually got the whole company involved in sort of away day sessions in helping define what were those values. But I think, as you say, it's the words themselves can have a lot of different meaning for different people. Culture has to be much deeper than that. Culture is much more of a feeling and a philosophy that can't be boiled down to a handful of nice sounding words. So the process of doing that, I think, was more valuable than anything. Having people be participating in that and talking about what those things meant for them, and having that become a shared experience. And then how do we put that into practice? I'd say the very most important place where we put that into practice is in our hiring. Right, we're a fast-growing organization. We interview and hire quite a lot of people, and if they don't pass our fit test, which for us is aligning to our mission, vision, values, doesn't matter what the talent level is, we're not going to take those people on. We have made a couple of mistakes on that front, and we've become more staunch in our view on that since.
I get it. I guess, we're again coming back what you're saying, because culture can't really be boiled down to a set of words. It has to be it has to be something different. It has to be incorporated in the entire organization, because even if the understanding is there, and let's say that everyone's on the same page, then it might not be the case that the action is there. And I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well, that like a very common practice, a very commonly used practice when it comes to our first step towards creating company culture, or defining it at least, is to establish the values. But then the next step is to get them incorporated. So how do you go about avoiding that the values simply become like website content or words on the wall, worst case? So apart from incorporating it in the hiring process, what other ideas do you have about that?
Kevin, you can go.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask you to go ahead, please.
Well, I think it's super important in your hiring, because then you're kind of building more up of some values. But I think so that's like the branding internally, what we're focusing on firstly. So we haven't put the values or the company culture on the website yet, because we really would like to enforce it firstly within the company. So we had the discussion with the company culture crew about all the values. So we kind of decided on 3 values. But then we asked everybody to list things within these 3 values that are happening within the company, but also what they're missing in the company. And I think that gave us a lot of insight, because what people see, so for example, one of the values is trust. But trust is something which is for some people within the company completely there. So they don't see any improvements because they trust everybody. They're super open personalities and can connect very easily. But on the other side, you have others who don't feel comfortable or they want to see improvements in, for example, giving feedback because they think that should be differently. And it's super fun to get the insight from every individual, but also connect the individuals with each other. So the person who thinks trust is completely there with the individual who thinks it's not there, and let the 2 of them come up with, okay, so what does it mean? And why do we have different perspectives? Okay, we're operating in different teams, but how does it affect it? And what do we think is like the standard, and how can we act upon it? So I think all these kind of assignments or activities or discussions are really like making these values come to life in a way, and also creates a situation where people feel it, what Kevin said in the beginning. So it's something that you feel, or that you it's a vague still something vague, but it makes it more concrete if people are working on it in a way. So either organizing a Frisbee event, or organizing a pizza night, or organizing a feedback training, all kind of stuff, but also having the discussion with each other. So why do we see things differently? Because we're different personalities, we're different people, we have different backgrounds, etc., etc. But still we're connected because we're working at the same company, but also we're connected because we live this company culture. So I think that's super important to give the company culture the attention, because if people, and that's what I said in the beginning, if the glue is strong, if people are connected, they want to work together and they're able to achieve all the goals we're having.
Yeah. Kevin, do you want to add something to that? Like really how to take the next step, how to go about incorporating the values?
I think we look to recognize when people are living the values. I think the way that we make sure that it's not just a poster on the wall. We have posters on the wall here. It is that we made sure when we define these that the management team today, who were the employees a couple of years ago, largely, they were really part of defining those. They have a sense of ownership of them. They align very clearly with our purpose, so they don't feel disjointed at all. And then every activity we do, we're putting through the filter of, are we doing this in a way that's aligned with the ethos of our company, the philosophy of our company, the values of our company, and sometimes we have discussions, and very frequently it comes up if there's a decision to be taken, which way would be more aligned with our values. When that is the behavior of the founders and that is the behavior of the early team, very quickly that is the behavior of everyone in the company. But that said, I mean, we're still early, right? We've gone from 15 to say 80 people globally, and I'm working on building up new offices around the world right now. And probably my number one concern is, how do I transfer the great culture that I'm so proud of in some of our offices to these new offices? And that's not something that's going to happen by accident. So it's going to be a lot of hard work and a lot of fun work by putting people together to share that experience of what the culture is. And I guess as much as a founder, you'd love to possibly tick the box of, I've done culture and now that's set. Yeah. Culture is by no means a tick box, much as I might wish it. Culture is more like a plant, right? You need to tend to it and take care of it. It does need to grow and evolve, but you need to also give it some guidance along the way and give it all the nutrients it needs to grow in a healthy way. So I don't know that we will always get that right. But it's front of mind for me, and spend more energy on that today than I ever imagined I might even 2 or 3 years ago.
Cool. And how do you make sure that it's like the same, or that it's in line in the different companies, and I think in different parts of the world?
It's a good question. I mean, we're trying to get it right. I think the things that we're doing to attempt to get that to work is making sure that people from different offices spend time together. Those that set the example, we make sure that they are out front and center, and the greatest examples of people doing great things aligned to our culture are presented as role models. Things that are not aligned to our culture are not sort of aligned to an individual, but are talked about in a way, and we talk about how we can make better decisions or how we might do it differently next time. We just make sure that it's never out of mind for very long. We keep coming back to it. We make a point of making time for it, even though all the business needs sometimes feel like they might be more pressing. Ignoring this, I think we recognize now the value that is just too great to allow that to happen. Getting other offices to be successful, again, a big piece of it though, I think, has to come back to hiring. Making sure that when you get people in, they understand what they're signing up to, and they genuinely are personally motivated by the mission and values of our company.
Do you have also some sort of is this incorporated in the onboarding process in a way, some sort of culture explanation or vision and mission explained?
So I mean, if you're going to interview with Winnow, you probably better have an idea of what our purpose and our mission is. It's very obvious for us in a way that's maybe not so easy for I don't know, an investment bank, right? So yes, we do spend some time on it during the onboarding process, but we'd expect people to, even in an interviewing process, have a pretty good sense of who we are, and we're looking to get a pretty good sense of who they are, and understand either they have a passion for the issue, the global issue that we are trying to have a meaningful impact on, or if not that, they at least, we believe they do care about it, they understand it, and they can adopt that passion, even if it wasn't their prior passion.
Yeah. What do you say to that, Annelies? Do you also incorporate it in the onboarding process partially, or is it like very heavily emphasized in the recruiting process already?
Not so clearly. Well, I think in a way it is, because in every recruitment process I'm involved, so I'm like the culture gatekeeper, so to say, and there's always one of the founders involved. but I don't think that's feasible anymore in a couple of months. So I think we need to make sure that not only me and the founders know what we would like to see in every individual who's working here at Speakap, but I think we also need to train the other interviewers in a way on how do we make sure that we know the values of individuals, but also their personality traits and how it fits in the team, but especially how it fits in the company culture. Yeah, we need to take steps on that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, my point of view is that oftentimes also culture is what you were saying, Kevin. Basically, it's not like when you start talking about culture, it's not then you start creating culture, because culture starts more or less immediately from the start, like starting with, for example, the vision and the philosophy of the founders already. So what would you say, Kevin? Like when was the first time that you explicitly started talking about culture and how you want to shape it?
I'd say the seeds of it happened, really early on between myself and my co-founder Mark, and maybe we'd started hiring or not by that point, but thinking very early on about who we were and how we wanted the company to reflect that. It probably started, if I'm really honest, it started when we thought about what did we want the brand of our company to be, and how did we want to present ourselves to our clients. And a big piece of that was we wanted to always be based on principles of honesty and transparency. So those are things that I think were the very first of our values to sort of appear on the radar, because both Mark and I held those values very dear and wanted to sort of hold those sacred in our business in every aspect. So before we ever started talking about what culture we wanted to create in the company, we were already doing it because there were just certain norms, certain ways of operating that we wanted to hold even between us as founders.
Yeah.
I tell you, the very first moment it goes back to for me is we wanted to set out the founders agreement, the way we would divide up the shares of the company and how we were going to put work into it early days when it wasn't necessarily 100% of our time. All of that was back to a grounding of fairness and transparency, and just built from there. So really, I'd say the first values of the company just came from the heart, effectively, and that's I think that's the easiest way, right? If the values of your company are your own values, that's really easy. You've just got to learn to communicate them and find people that share them.
Yeah. And Annelies, also when you joined Speakap, was it already a topic that was kind of explicitly talked about? Was there sort of like work going on around the topic of exemplifying culture and integrating values, etc., or was it something that you, when you joined us as chief HR officer, kicked off?
Well, kind of both happened, because it's the same for Kevin. The two founders who started the company a couple of years ago, they also had some agreements with each other, and they also had their list of company values, which were 5 values. And the funny thing is that eventually, like the 3 values now, 2 of the original values of the founders are in this list of 3. So I think that's something super special. So in a way, they really live the values, or hire the people who kind of could connect with these values. I don't know what happened there specifically, but I think it's nice that 2 of the original values are in the list of 3 now. I've experienced it in previous companies how difficult it is if the culture is not right, because it's super negative for your total workforce. So I experienced it the other way around, and how difficult it is to turn it around if it's not said clearly in the beginning. So therefore I emphasized on starting with it, although for business it's maybe not like the first thing to think about. Also within HR you have a lot of different topics who are way more tangible, or way more like get results right away.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think because of they started with it like in the beginning, and I experienced it in like the negative way. We agreed upon that this was a topic I would be working on from the beginning onwards.
I think it's very, very true. Very true what you're saying, that a big pitfall or a big mistake would be to start talking about it too late, which I think is probably also one of the more common reasons as to why company culture can go bad, for example.
But I think a lot of, sorry to add on that, I think a lot of companies start working on their culture if it's not working. So if they experience that their company culture is negative, or that they lose people because people don't like the company culture, or that there's like this bad connection between employees or not a connection at all, or that they're working in the strange or the weird ways together, then management is thinking, maybe we should change the company culture. But changing a company culture, if it's already there, I think that's the hardest to do. And it costs a lot of energy, and I think it's a waste of energy and just time, and also affect your results.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my my next
question.
It was a very great passage into the next question. Very nice bridge. No, but that is, as you say, it's. I think that's common to start that it gets attention once it's gone wrong, or it can be the case at least. So what would you say, like if an organization realized that they stand in front of a cultural change, which is, as you say, really, really difficult topic, what sort of advice would you have? What ideas would you have as to how it could turn around?
I think it's the other way around of what Kevin is said before, is the people who are living like the bad company culture, focus on these people, or either they need to try to like change their behavior. I think that's a hard thing to do, but I think you need to focus on these people of why are they kind of affecting the others, but also the ones who are really living the company values or the company culture, give them the space to give it more attention and to become this company hero, culture heroes, or I don't know, you can like brand it internally or give them the attention in a way. I think people love attention, so attention in both ways, I would say.
No, I would very much agree with that, and also start with identifying what you're saying, identifying which are our cultural ambassadors and which are our cultural opponents, if we say it like that. Kevin, I would love to hear your view on that as well. What are your ideas when it comes to the big topic of an organizational cultural change?
I think we're veering into the world of opinion rather than experience for me now, having never been through it. But I guess some of my thoughts are, I would suspect the best way to approach it is like a corporate crisis, or like a corporate turnaround situation. You're really going to have to make it a turning point moment in the company's history if it's that important to you. If it's not that important to you, then leave it alone. Don't go at it halfway, I would expect. But if it is a turning point moment, if it is a moment of identity crisis for the company, if there is a real business reason that this needs to happen, then you've got to do it in a big way. I would suggest that means committing, publicly, making public statements about how you're going to change, probably some personnel changes that align to that. Very likely, probably aligning some resources behind getting that culture right, and potentially over-investing in it for a period, making sure that it is front and center, making sure that your founders or your leaders, whoever they may be at that stage, are really out in front, talking about, but also demonstrating those values, and inviting everyone else to get on board. Hopefully you have a way of creating that process, that there is some sense of ownership given to the teams. But I'm thinking more here of larger organizations where it may not be feasible to get 1 million people to feel like they've had a hand in creating your new mission, vision, and values for your corporation. I think there you've got to set the norms, you've got to seed those values, you've got to make people understand that that we will live those values as a company, and if you're not on board with that, then it'll be time to find your way on to a different place, and making sure that that's something that's cascaded throughout the organization. That would be sort of my big business approach to making a significant cultural change. Put in that position, but as I said, just my 2 cents.
Okay, cool. Yeah, to summarize a little, I mean, we've been talking a lot about sort of laying the groundwork and building the foundation very early on, more or less already before the company is actually scaling. But I still think, nevertheless, that is the foundation for managing essentially to scale your culture, to get the foundation right, because otherwise you're basically just scaling what is not there or what's broken. But when it comes to, I mean, you both have worked for or have growing teams. So what do you think now going forward? What would you say now would be your approach as to how you're going to maintain this culture and spread it also to new employees and make them embrace it and become cultural ambassadors when the companies are growing? Annelies, do you want to give it a crack to answer that question?
Yeah, well, I think that one is easy. So firstly, it's in your hiring process. So really focusing on skills, but specifically on personality types, how they fit in the team, the company as a whole. I think that these 3 components are super important. But also the onboarding process. So the first 6 months within the company. So not only becoming good in your job and know what you exactly need to do and get the results that you're hired for in a way, but really make sure that people connect with the rest of the team and really start living the company culture. I think that's the most important part of this first 6 months.
Kevin, what are your thoughts on that topic?
I was just reminded of someone who's in an accelerator program with me, founder of a company called Air, Anish. He's actually written a book that's about his philosophy and values, and every employee of their company gets a copy of that book. Wow. And I think that's his way of making sure that that vision, that philosophy that's deeper than a few corporate speak words continues to propagate out through the company. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. We haven't done anything like that. Just thought it was a pretty cool example to share that I'd heard recently. I think for us it's continuing to spend energy, keep it in focus. But as I said, largely we went through a process of handing that responsibility for that company culture over to the team, to the early team, and really, while we continue to live those values and try to be great examples of it, we're only a piece of spreading it. So it's making sure that everyone in the team continues to invest in that too, so to speak, to water that plant that is our company culture. And for now, it seems to be working really well, but we don't want to take our focus away from it. We'll continue to look for ways to do that and make sure it persists. That makes sense.
Sounds wise. Cool. Yeah, we're going to wrap up, but actually, finally, I just wanna change the topic a little bit. But yeah, summer is essentially in full swing, and hopefully, at least for both of your holidays are coming up, and hopefully we will all get some spare time to wind down and maybe read a book or a podcast. So I just want to round up by asking the two of you for a book or a podcast recommendation. What would you like to recommend for the hammock now for the summer? Annelies, you want to share your recommendation?
I was hoping that Kevin would start so I could have some more time to think about this.
I conveniently couldn't find my unmute button.
Okay.
Okay. Well, currently I'm reading a super interesting book which is called The Culture Map.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about, because a lot of people think that behavior is affected by personality, or that's like easily said, yeah, but he's an introvert or she is an extrovert, etc. But I think your cultural background is also affecting on how you're behaving within the company. So that's what I'm reading now, and it's super interesting. So I would recommend that one if you're working in an international team. Yeah.
So, sorry, could you say the name again? I didn't.
The Culture Map.
The Culture Map.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure who the writer is, but yeah, I find that an interesting one.
Find it, yeah. Yeah. Kevin, did you find the unmute button?
I did eventually. I guess one that I picked up to reread recently, and it's a different sort of aspect on this prism. But the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's Stephen Covey. It's a pretty classic book, and I think it's really, I like to review it from time to time effectively, because it reminds me sort of the inside out process of defining who it is I want to be, and I think as a founder, I get the privilege to try to reflect that into an organization that I have a great opportunity to grow, but fundamentally trying to be the best person I can be, and finding some principles in that book that I continue to come back to and use. That's a really useful piece for me.
Cool. Thank you so much. We're running out of time, so I just want to end by thanking both of you so much for partaking in the podcast today and for providing your thoughts and really interesting insights, experiences, and ideas on the very difficult topic of culture, or the very, at least, large topic of culture. And I'll hand back to you, Randy.
Well, thanks, guys. First of all, we want to thank our Facebook audience for watching us live, or if you're watching the recorded version, we want a special thanks to Linda and Annelies and Kevin for joining us. We invite you to visit our page, scaleupacademy.io, to learn more about us and what we do. If you find these live shows valuable, we would ask that you hit that like button and share today's show. I'm your host, Randy Cantrell, and hope that you'll join us next week, Monday, June the 18th. We're going to discuss scaling up engineering. Until then, everybody have a great week.